Hi, folks. Thanks for watching. When I first came to MSNBC 5 years ago, it was the healthcare debate. Seems like every night we did a story on the public option. I wanted it. I believed in it. I'm there on this. This is an everyday story. I believe that we are now in the 11th hour, and I believe that we are on the verge of potentially stamp of approval to the worst decision this president could make for generations to come. Because if there is a disaster over the aquifer and it's irreversible damage, what president's going to do that after President Obama? Just think, we would be remembering President Obama for a long time for all the wrong reasons. He's done so many good things so far. I plead with the president now again tonight. Say no. We begin tonight with an angle of the story that is very, very important, because I was a 65%er. We got new numbers on the Keystone XL pipeline. A new Washington Post ABC News poll says 65% of Americans think that President Obama should give it the stamp of approval and move forward. They approve of it. Only 22% oppose it. Well, I was a 65%er. I make the case tonight to you that I believe that the majority of these folks right here don't have all the facts. Nobody else is covering it on a day-to-day basis. Now, I used to be part of that 65% until I did some research on all of this. Now, if you look at the facts and talk to folks on the ground, I think fair-minded Americans would make the turn as I did, and they would change their mind. The pipeline is so important to America. It's so important that it's not there. Let me make the case again tonight against the pipeline. The poll shows that 85% of Americans think the XL pipeline will create a significant number of jobs. Hold it right there. Almost 9 out of 10 Americans think that this is a job creator. That's the only thing the Republicans ever talk about. Where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? We finally got a job-creating project we could put in the middle of the country. Rand Paul, in that opening soundbite we just played, he's wrong. He's 100% wrong. Some of the righties, you know what they're doing? They're feeding on this stuff. Here we go, jumping in front of the parade one more time. Wisconsin Governor, he had to get in the action. He wrote a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry just yesterday, urging him to approve the pipeline. Wisconsin, behind the pipeline. Interesting. It's nowhere near Wisconsin. Now, but Walker claims, oh yeah, he claims that the Keystone XL pipeline would create 9,000 jobs in his state alone over the next 20 years. What study is he talking about? Who the hell can project what the economy is going to be like 15 years from now? Walker, you expect us to believe that? Give me a break. There is no study out there that backs that number out. There's no study out there that backs it up at all. He's pulling it out of the air, just throwing it out there, thinking that people will believe it. Well, he's working on the 65%. Oh, this is a big job creator is what it is. No, it's not. Governor Walker, you're lying. My team worked all day today trying to find that study that you say is going to create 9,000 jobs in the Badger State over the next 20 years. Show it to me. Embarrass me, Walker. Tell me it's wrong. Show me it's wrong. It's not there. The State Department says the pipeline will create roughly 1,900 temporary jobs. You know, when I was out on the ground, I talked to a lot of people in Wisconsin, in Nebraska, and they said, yeah, there's going to create some jobs, but a lot of them aren't going to be permanent. Once the project is completed, according to the State Department study, there's going to be 50 full-time jobs. This is the number that they're hanging their hat on at the State Department. Under 2,000 jobs for 2 years, and in the long term, we're talking 50. But somehow, there's going to be 9,000 jobs on a part of the country that doesn't even have the pipeline. And you're supposed to believe that? Meanwhile, 47% of Americans, here's a big one, 47% of Americans think the Keystone Pipeline will pose a significant risk. Almost half of America thinks that, yeah, this is kind of risky to the environment. And make no mistake, these Americans are very concerned about the risk involved. They have good reason to oppose the pipeline. For example, not too long ago, just last year, there was a devastating pipeline rupture in the town of Mayflower, Arkansas. There it is. right below the Keystone XL. On March 29, 2013, ExxonMobil Pegasus pipeline ruptured, sending the small town into chaos.
Friday afternoon, well over 10,000 barrels of oil came spewing out of a ruptured Exxon pipeline, covering the streets and backyards of this Mayflower neighborhood. Although nearly 12,000 barrels of oil and water have been vacuumed so far, some backyards like this one are a much more challenging project to take on.
The surface is still wet with oil, but the volume of oil is off the street. Now that's separate from the oil that's in the yards of a few of our fine residents.
It was a big pop or a loud bang sound, and I didn't think anything about it, and went on. About 5 minutes later I came out and there was the river of oil.
The river of oil, that's how residents are describing what it looked like as thousands of barrels of petroleum came flowing out of the Pegasus pipeline down Starlight Road.
You ready to have that happen over the aquifer? This spill right here was devastating to the local community. 7,000 barrels of heavy crude were spilled in a suburban neighborhood. 40 homes were evacuated. 5 homes were actually bought out by ExxonMobil to mop this thing up. 2 homes were demolished. Hundreds of animals were impacted, and there were reports that the nearby Lake Conway had been contaminated as well. Now, some residents of Mayflower, you know what they're doing? They're not only mopping up, they're still fighting ExxonMobil in court. It's interesting because when I was on the ground in Nebraska, one of the good old boys told me, you know, Ed, if we ever have a problem on our land, you know, we don't have as deep a pockets as these oil companies to be able to fight in these people. Gosh, they're living that in Mayflower, Arkansas. The spill was bad. It would be nothing compared to a Keystone XL spill. The Pegasus line carried roughly 90,000 barrels a day. The Keystone XL pipeline is expected to carry 830,000 barrels a day. Big difference in numbers. Gosh, I wonder if the pressure of the oil going through the pipe is the same. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot more pressure on this number right here. And that good old China pipe, I'm sure it's going to work good, isn't it? Here's a map of both pipelines. Thankfully, the Pegasus pipeline doesn't run over the aquifer. There it is. If the Keystone ruptures over the aquifer, it will be irreversible. You take this spill and you put it right there, and you have generational irreparable damage. The reasons to oppose the Keystone XL pipeline, they're very clear. Unfortunately, many Nebraska lawmakers, well, they've been bought out by the oil company. They're just not on the same page. Is that an inflammatory statement? Prove me wrong. Today, 29 Nebraska state senators sent a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry. Have you noticed lately we've got a lot of letters floating around ever since we've been covering this? Urging, of course, support of the pipeline. These 29 Nebraska state senators are telling Secretary of State John Kerry, hey, let's go, let's do it. It's over half the state Senate. Now, the report shows TransCanada might be buying a little bit of influence right here. According to the website Watchdog.org, TransCanada has spent over $700,000 in lobbying over the last couple of years. $700,000 in a small media state, gosh, that buys a lot of time and a lot of influence. There's no doubt TransCanada has a deep wallet, and I believe that they're buying influence. That's the sense I got on the ground in Nebraska. When I was in Nebraska, one former state senator told me lobbying over the pipeline was rampant.